They crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. What happened backstage 30 minutes ago wasn't wrestling. It wasn't a work. It wasn't some carefully choreographed segment for your entertainment. This was an execution. Drew McIntyre, one of the toughest men to ever lace up boots, was found unconscious in a pool of his own blood after Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu turned a locker room into a crime scene. And the worst part? Management let it happen. Right now, paramedics are loading Drew into an ambulance while Cody and Fatu are being physically restrained by 12 security guards. The glass from shattered mirrors is still embedded in Drew's back. His face is unrecognizable. And somewhere in that building, someone made the decision that this brutality was acceptable as long as it happened away from the cameras. But here's the thing they didn't count on. People talk. Footage leaks. And the truth always comes out. Before we get into exactly what went down in that locker room, I need to know where you stand. Comment right now. Team Cody and Fatu or Team Drew? Because after you hear what triggered this attack, you might surprise yourself with your answer. Let's rewind to 3 hours before the assault. Drew McIntyre was cutting a promo during rehearsal, and according to multiple sources who were in the building, he went completely off script. We're talking nuclear levels of shooting on people. Drew didn't just break kayfabe, he obliterated it. He talked about Cody's father, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, in ways that would make your grandmother clutch her pearls. The exact words are too vulgar to repeat here without getting this video demonetized. But witnesses say Drew questioned everything from Dusty's legacy to Cody's worthiness of carrying the Rhodes name. He called Cody a trust fund wrestler playing dress-up in his daddy's polka dots. He said the only reason Cody has a career is because Vince McMahon felt sorry for the sad little rich kid who couldn't make it on his own. But Drew didn't stop there. He turned his attention to Jacob Fatu and went after his entire family lineage. The Anoa'i dynasty, one of the most respected bloodlines in wrestling history, got dragged through the mud. Drew called them overrated, overpushed, and overprotected, and said Jacob was the least talented Samoan to ever step foot in a wrestling ring. Now, you might be thinking Drew was just trying to get heat, trying to sell a program. But here's what makes this different. Management had explicitly told him to dial it back. Creative had given him bullet points, safe material that would generate buzz without destroying relationships. Drew ignored all of it. He wanted to hurt people, and he knew exactly which buttons to push. Question for the comments. Has Drew McIntyre gone too far lately with his promos? Or is this exactly what wrestling needs? Because I'm genuinely curious where the line is for you. According to Backstage sources, Cody Rhodes heard the promo from catering. He immediately dropped his plate, which shattered on the floor, and started walking toward the rehearsal area. Multiple wrestlers tried to stop him. Kevin Owens physically blocked his path. Seth Rollins grabbed his arm and tried to talk him down. But Cody wasn't hearing any of it. His face had gone completely blank, that 1,000-yard stare that anyone who knows him recognizes as the moment before things get violent. At the same time, Jacob Fatu was in the training area when someone showed him a clip of Drew's promo on their phone. Fatu reportedly watched it 3 times without saying a word. Then he stood up, removed his training gloves, and walked out. JUSO tried to follow him, tried to be the voice of reason, but Fatu told him to stay out of it, in a tone that made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. Here's where the timeline gets critical. Security was notified that both Cody and Fatu were looking for Drew. Protocol in these situations is to separate the talent, cool everyone down, maybe set up a meeting with management to work things out professionally. But security never got the order to intervene. In fact, according to someone who was in the production truck, a senior producer specifically said to let it play out. Let it play out. As if 3 grown men were about to have a civil conversation instead of what actually happened. Drew was in his private locker room, probably feeling pretty good about himself after that promo. He'd rattled cages, gotten under people's skin, done his job as a heel. He didn't hear them coming. The door to his locker room didn't just open, it exploded off its hinges. Cody Rhodes hit it with a running shoulder block that sent wood splinters flying across the room. What happened next lasted approximately 4 minutes, but those 4 minutes are going to have consequences that ripple through wrestling for years. Cody went in first. No words, no warnings, just pure aggression. He caught Drew with a right hand that split his eyebrow open immediately. Blood started pouring down Drew's face, but he's Drew McIntyre, he doesn't go down easy. He fired back with a headbutt that staggered Cody, then grabbed him and threw him into an equipment trunk hard enough to dent the metal. But then Jacob Fatu entered the room, and the entire dynamic changed. Fatu is legitimately one of the most dangerous men in professional wrestling. We're not talking about character work or storyline strength. We're talking about a man who can legitimately hurt people if he chooses to. And he chose to. Comment below. Is Jacob Fatu the most dangerous wrestler in the business right now? Give me your top 3. Fatu hit Drew with a super kick that echoed through the hallway outside the locker room. Drew's head snapped back. His legs buckled. But he somehow stayed upright. That's when Cody recovered and the real beating began. They worked in perfect synchronization, like they'd planned this for weeks. Cody would hit Drew from one side, Fatu from the other. When Drew tried to cover up, they'd drag his arms away. When he tried to fight back, they'd double-team him until he couldn't mount any offense. This wasn't a fight. This was systematic dismantling of a human being. Cody grabbed Drew and drove him face-first into the mirror. The glass shattered, and huge shards embedded themselves in Drew's forehead, cheeks, and shoulders. Blood was everywhere now, coating the floor, splattered across the walls. Drew collapsed, and for a moment it looked like it might be over. Then Fatu picked him up and delivered a spinning elbow that connected with such force that people 3 rooms away heard the impact. Drew went limp, completely unconscious, but Fatu wasn't done. He lifted Drew's dead weight and powerbombed him through the wooden bench in the center of the locker room. The bench exploded into pieces, and Drew's body just folded in the wreckage. That's when Cody did something that's going to be debated forever. He grabbed one of the larger mirror shards and held it over Drew's unconscious body. For 10 seconds, maybe 15, he just stood there with this jagged piece of glass, looking down at the man who disrespected his father's legacy. Everyone who saw it thought he was actually going to do it, thought he was going to take this from assault to something much darker. But he dropped the glass, stepped back, and that's when security finally rushed in. Here's my question for you. Do you think Cody showed restraint by not using that glass, or did he go too far even getting to that point? Drop your thoughts below because this is complicated. 12 security guards flooded that locker room. It took 6 of them to control Jacob Fatu, who was still trying to get at Drew's unconscious body. Cody didn't resist, but he also didn't take his eyes off Drew. He just stood there, chest heaving, covered in another man's blood, watching as paramedics rushed in to assess the damage. The initial medical report is horrifying. Drew has a severe concussion, multiple facial fractures, a broken nose, damaged orbital bone, deep lacerations requiring over 60 stitches, possible internal injuries from the powerbomb, and glass embedded so deep in his back that they'll need surgery to remove it all. He's looking at minimum 6 months on the shelf, possibly longer depending on what the full medical evaluation reveals. 6 months. Half a year of his career gone because of 4 minutes of uncontrolled violence. But here's what's making people absolutely furious right now. The company is trying to spin this as a locker room altercation that got out of hand. They're not calling it what it is, which is aggravated assault. They're not suspending Cody or Fatu. In fact, according to the latest reports, both men are scheduled to appear on tonight's show as if nothing happened. How is that possible? How can 2 wrestlers hospitalize a colleague and face 0 consequences? Comment your theory below, because the only explanations I can come up with are either corruption or complicity from the top. The locker room is split right down the middle on this. Half the roster thinks Drew got exactly what he deserved for constantly crossing lines and disrespecting people. The other half thinks Cody and Fatu went way too far, that no promo justifies putting someone in the hospital. There have been heated arguments backstage all afternoon, shoving matches between wrestlers picking sides. Seth Rollins publicly stated that while he doesn't condone the violence, he understands why it happened. Kevin Owens was more direct, saying Drew wrote a check his ass couldn't cash. But others like AJ Styles and Randy Orton have called for Cody and Fatu to be arrested, claiming this crosses every line that exists in professional wrestling. Social media is exploding right now. Drew's name is trending worldwide, but so are Cody's and Fatu's. Fans are picking sides, creating hashtags, making this into tribal warfare. Some are celebrating the attack as justice being served. Others are calling it criminal behavior that should result in prosecutions. Quick poll for the comments. Should Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu face criminal charges? Or is this a wrestling matter that should stay in-house? Here's what nobody's talking about yet but needs to be discussed. Management's role in all of this. If security was told to let it play out, that means someone in a position of authority made the decision to allow this beating to happen. That's not negligence, that's facilitation. That's potentially criminal conspiracy to commit assault. Why would management allow this? Best case scenario, they thought the three men would have a heated confrontation that could be used for storyline purposes later. Worst case scenario, they wanted Drew taught a lesson for repeatedly going off script and creating problems. Either way, their inaction led directly to a man being hospitalized. The company owes us answers. They owe Drew McIntyre answers. They owe Cody and Fatu clarity on what happens next. Because right now, everyone's operating in this fog of confusion where nobody knows if this is being treated as real or as part of the show. And that ambiguity is dangerous. If this is real and there are no consequences, what's to stop someone else from taking matters into their own hands next time they feel disrespected? If this is somehow part of a storyline, how do you ever ask fans to take workplace violence seriously again? There's footage. Multiple people recorded parts of the attack on their phones. The company has confiscated some devices, threatened legal action against anyone who leaks videos, but in 2025, that's like trying to hold back the ocean with your hands. Something will get out eventually, and when it does, the world is going to see exactly how brutal this was. I want you to answer this honestly in the comments. If footage of the attack leaks, will you watch it? Or is there a line you won't cross even as a wrestling fan? Cody Rhodes hasn't released a public statement, but people close to him say he has zero regrets. He feels Drew disrespected not just his father, but everything the Rhodes name represents. In Cody's mind, there are certain things you don't say, certain lines you don't cross, and Drew obliterated all of them. The beating was justice, pure and simple. Jacob Fatu's perspective is reportedly similar. The Anoa'i family has given everything to professional wrestling for generations. They've sacrificed bodies, relationships, and in some cases lives for this business. For Drew to dismiss that legacy as overpushed and overprotected was an insult that demanded a physical response. But Drew McIntyre, assuming he recovers enough to respond, is going to have his own perspective. He'll probably argue he was doing his job, generating heat, being a heel. He'll say violence outside the ring has no place in modern wrestling. He'll position himself as the victim of two men who couldn't handle words. And honestly, all three of them have valid points from their perspectives. That's what makes this so complicated and so fascinating. The real victims here might be the fans. We invest emotionally in these characters and storylines. We buy tickets, merchandise, streaming subscriptions. And when something like this happens, when the line between work and shoot becomes completely blurred, it undermines everything. How are we supposed to react to Cody Rhodes now? Is he a hero standing up for his family, or a violent criminal who belongs in jail? Final question, and this is important. Can you still support Cody Rhodes after this, or does this change how you see him? Drop your answer below. The next few days are going to determine the future of multiple careers. If charges are filed, Cody and Fatu could face serious legal consequences. If the company tries to turn this into a storyline, they'll face massive backlash for exploiting real violence. If they do nothing, they'll set a precedent that lawlessness is acceptable as long as you're a top star. Drew McIntyre's career might never be the same. Even if he physically recovers, the psychological impact of that beating will linger. And there's always the possibility of permanent damage that we won't know about for months. This story is developing by the hour. More details are emerging, more witnesses are coming forward, more footage is allegedly circulating privately. The wrestling world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. But here's what we know for certain right now. Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu destroyed Drew McIntyre backstage in an attack that was brutal, calculated, and possibly sanctioned by management. The consequences of those 4 minutes will echo through wrestling for years to come. Share this video. Make some noise. Let the company know we're watching and we demand answers. Because if we stay silent, if we just move on to the next thing, we're telling them this level of violence is acceptable. It's not. And we need to make that crystal clear.